to begin?
Wasn't much to say this time, was there?
Well, I'm traumatized.
Luckily, nobody else.
Welcome back to our first ever reaction video.
Yay!
Before we go into all of the action, this season starts with a new intro. The same theme, but a new intro. What do you think?
I think it's quite cute. It's dynamic, cute, amazing. But I don't think anyone is here to talk about the tapestry.
Yeah, but let's talk about the opening, because I really liked the opening. I felt so nostalgic. I really liked the music and the North.
Ugh, boring!
I get that we might have a little bit of a difference of opinion. I just felt like it really mirrored the first episode of season 1 really well, where we saw King's Landing again. And it's just been so long since we saw Winterfell.
It's called the House of the Dragon, not the House of the Wolf.
Right?
I rest my case.
Okay, I guess you just win this one then. I suppose you won't agree here either, but I did really like seeing, going back to the wall and all of the Northmen and the snow. And it's just, vibes. So what do you think about Craig and Stark?
I mean, it seems like a cutie. They didn't kiss.
Careful what you wish for. You might get more than you ask.
Wow, look at them trying not to gaze lovingly into each other's eyes. At least he's not threatening him with his dragon. He seems to be appreciative of that. It's a nice way to gain an ally without, them fearing for their lives.
Do you have anything else to add to this North story? It was quick, sweet, nostalgic. I liked it.
It felt too long. Let's go.
Next we have the scene with Rhaenys and Daemon. I'm not even sure if we've had a scene with them.
Speaking directly to one another? I don't think so.
I don't think so. Very interesting. Two very interesting characters together in one room. And obviously Rhaenys blames Daemon for quite a bit.
And so do we.
Obviously, as most should. And although I have my ups and downs with Rhaenys, I think this was quite an interesting conversation. Obviously, not the least because Daemon is somehow making sense.
Might be a first.
His word sounds very harsh, as he is kind of blaming Rhaenyra for not being more present, and it's understandable. But he's not wrong she shouldn't have gone alone. He's not wrong that she still has duties.
At the same time, he's being very rash and just storming out and trying to command Rhaenys go with him to kill Vhagar and Aemon without leave from Rhaenyra, who is supposed to be their sovereign and their ruler. And Rhaenyra is obviously, from what we can tell in the conversation, not present. And Daemon is just going ahead and doing his thing, what he thinks is right.
Well, kind, gentle delivery has never been his strength. It doesn't seem like he's put away that whole he is trying to play at war that he's very excited to do.
I just kind of love the moment where Rhaenys is just like worried if you were king, or what she says to him when he's trying to command her. And it's like Meleys is in the background, so it's like you just know that Daemon can't like mess with Rhaenys, and it's just I like seeing Daemon put in his place.
Oh, it's very satisfying.
I quite like the scene.
A lot of Rhaenyra this episode is, as you mentioned, understandably, she is deep in grief.
Yes, I think maybe she only has one line in the whole episode.
I think so, yeah. It's well done. It makes sense. It's very emotional.
I quite like that they give her the space to show her grief and feel it.
She is obviously trying to find Luke, as Rhaenys talked about. Rhaenyra has to kind of see proof that he is truly gone to actually accept it and start to mourn, which is obviously very sad. And then she does end up finding him, or some fishers seem to have caught a piece of Arrax in a net.
Her grief makes a lot of sense, and of course we feel with her in this episode. Something that I think maybe made me feel a little bit like weird was that at the end of the last season, at the very end of episode 10, we see Rhaenyra being furious. We see her, and it's the cliffhanger, right, at the very end. And I think a lot of us kind of thought that she was gonna really have some sort of retribution early on in this season, and then it felt a little weird to me that she's spending kind of the whole episode in just sadness with not actually being involved in any of the dramatics, if we shall call it that happens in this episode.
I kind of agree, and part of that is because I think in episode 10, when she hears of his passing, I almost felt like she went from grief to anger very quickly. So then she's back to grief again. I don't know, it definitely made for kind of a good cliffhanger, so maybe that's why. And also, I've never lost a child. I am sure the emotions are all over the place. But I do agree that it feels maybe a little bit jarring. We have been waiting for her for basically 2 years to go full on scorched earth, and it's not what we got this episode. Maybe the next.
Maybe. I think I was just really hoping that she would get her moment to respond to what happened to her in the very last episode of the last season. And I feel like Daemon kind of stole her right to respond in a way.
And as Rhaenyra finds, obviously, the evidence that Luke is no longer alive, she is finding a piece of Arrax. And I think Arrax, I'm not entirely sure, but I think he's hatched from the egg of Syrax. So they're kind of both mourning family members.
Baby too.
If dragons can mourn other dragons.
Yeah, do they recognize?
I'm
their
not
own
entirely
offspring?
sure.
Hmm.
But
It's sad all the same.
Rhaenyra is obviously broken.
It would be hard to let her do both. To like respond and be
Angry and
merciless and aggressive, and at the same time have room for that grief.
yeah, a lot of big feelings.
Yeah.
We do have this short scene of Corlys at the docks, where he is meeting this man, Alan, apparently, who dragged him out of the sea. So maybe he wanted to kind of thank him. What did you think about the scene?
Boring!
I really like the scene as we get our first shot of King's Landing, when the guards are standing atop the wall and they're just screaming dragon, and it's obviously Vhagar, lovely little grandma. And I really like that you're kind of throughout this entire episode getting the sense that every single time people who do not have a dragon see a dragon, they're kind of tense because they know that war is in the air and dragons are obviously kind of dangerous, you know? Don't know if you knew that.
Bit of an overreaction, isn't it?
Maybe a bit, yeah. But I do really like that you can kind of feel the tension, and they're obviously waiting for the retaliation of Luke.
Yeah, they do make it a big point that they are needing Vhagar to protect King's Landing in order to keep potential attackers at bay.
Obviously, yeah. She is their best weapon.
But where are the others?
Where are the others? They keep talking about the green dragons, but where are they?
They're supposed to be bigger. Give them to us. I wasn't aware that they had scorpions.
I'm going to be honest, me either. We obviously saw them in season 7 and 8 of Game of Thrones. And that was something they had been working on. And Cersei had a jolly old time testing it on that dragon skull.
Wasn't that Balerion?
Yeah, that was Balerion. And we are getting our first sighting of Aegon this season. And Helaena and at least one of their children.
That's Jaehaera, isn't it?
I think so. Looking cute and very blonde. I quite like this scene.
I feel like there's more of a relation between them. They seem more familiar with each other than they did in the last season.
Absolutely.
Even though very little time has actually passed since
True.
that dinner scene, and here there's been, what, a few weeks at most?
Mm-hmm. They do seem to have closer relationship, if you can even tell that from that, just because they seemed so distant and never even talked previously. So it's just nice to kind of get a little bit more of that So if this is, as far as I can remember, the first time we see Aegon and Helaena actually interact, I do like that, especially at the end, he's just saying, well, she's just like that. She just says weird things sometimes.
What a mystery our queen is.
Yes. So he seems a little bit more, perhaps, accepting of her instead of just saying she's...
I think he's calling her an idiot.
Well, that's not great,
In the
is it?
Driftmark episode,
Yes.
so he's come a ways from there. I also like the charisma that we see from him.
And he is looking currently for his eldest son. I do think it's cute how he seems very enthusiastic to include his child in proceedings, and especially the small council. He is kind of taking on his new role very enthusiastically.
I like how he seems to be quite dedicated in his role as father, because that's not really the vibe we were getting from last season.
It's a very huge shift. And just a tiny little note that we are seeing the servants in this room. We do get a little bit more on that later, but the servants are also now wearing green, and I'm not sure if those are actually Hightower or if they're kind of just the whole castle is just turning to the color green and support, or...
It's the newest fashion trend.
Yes, perhaps. Or it's the uniforms provided to them. I don't know. Well, are we just... That's... I mean, you just stopped on the perfect image. That was...
That was not planned.
It wasn't planned, but here we are. And isn't that just describing this entire... Maybe if we blur it. We're gonna blur it. You all saw the episode, you know what this is.
You know.
The jump scare, right?
Yeah.
The jump scare. And the noise hit me first. And I'm just trying to work through my trauma here. Okay, this... It just hit me like a ton of bricks. Well, first off, I'm just going to say this is not my preferred way of taking this particular relationship. I am preferring the Jane Austen way of the very sort of courtly love. There is desire and we can't act on it.
Because that was kind of the feeling I got from...
I know. And hence the joking around about kiss.
Yes, kiss, but don't actually do it.
Does anyone want to see this? I don't know, because I'm trying not to be judgy, because I mean...
Alicent's had
a rough go of it, and she's probably not had
that face. I think I could have been okay with them going in this direction of them having a relationship, but I didn't particularly like the way they went about it.
It's very uncomfortable.
Yeah. I think also with all the things that Kristen has been through.
Exactly.
To me, it just felt like... Icky, yeah. I don't feel like I saw enough
build up.
No.
And especially, I wish we saw kind of the first time this happened, because it definitely seems like it's not the first time. And yet we have no idea when this started. And when it's over, there is just this lack of warmth, and they seem less intimate than they were in the previous season. And it just seems like there's so much shame over it. And I get why. I definitely get why, because she's super repressed and he shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah, I would just like to see what led them to be in that position, because I feel like that's quite important.
Absolutely.
And how I would feel about this union, both Kristen and Alicent.
This union. That's a nice way of describing what's going on here.
Well, yeah, both Kristen and Alicent have had problematic encounters in this department in their pasts. And so I have a bad feeling about maybe the nature of their relationship.
Me too. It doesn't feel healthy, and that gets me on to what I do like about this, which is sounding bad, but hear me out. I do think it's interesting in the way this is, what this means for Alicent's character, because she is just falling apart. She is coming undone at the seams, and I am here for seeing that character development. Do you even call it development when it's definitely going in not perhaps the most positive direction? I don't know.
Reverse development.
Perhaps, but I do still think it's very interesting, and because she has had such an interesting and kind of not the most enviable life. I think it's very interesting to see all the things she's just doing as everything is falling apart. Obviously a war is coming and she just seems to be dealing with guilt and repressed everything. And that's interesting.
Love that for her.
But in the end, this whole Kristen Alicent thing, I have questions. When did it start? How did it start? Is this, like, how many times has it happened, to be a little bit crass? I don't really know. And also, are we going to see Daeron with brown hair? Because how extremely funny would that be?
That would change quite a bit.
I would kind of love it.
Yeah, I mean, I could be here for Alicent being a little bit of a hypocrite, maybe.
I mean, it makes for a very interesting character, and I am here for that. I'm not here for the perfect characters.
It just has to be believable for me.
Yes. Because it also ended with a different position of theirs. I feel like we probably haven't seen the last of it, even though they keep saying this was the last time. But maybe we'll have some questions answered, but I'm feeling it's not my preferred direction for them.
I really didn't like the last moment.
We'll get to it, because I didn't like it either. It's not my preferred direction, but maybe they can row the boat into the harbor.
I don't think they have enough boats. I did kind of like the moment where Kristen asks Alicent to put the cloak back on him. It's a small thing, but it feels
like they're in it together, like they're in this sin and shame together.
Yeah, kind of. Mm-hmm. And in his last relationship with Rhaenyra, there is a specific moment where the cloak is removed by Rhaenyra, and obviously Kristen is spiraling a lot after that event happens. And I don't know, there's something about the symbolism of the way Kristen goes to Alicent and finds comfort in his friendship with her there, that it seems he's trying to build his honor back on, and the cloak is kind of representative of his honor and his pureness. And I don't know, I'm kind of hoping that maybe it might have a nice symbolism that, like, he doesn't feel like this shames him. I don't know, it might be a reach.
I didn't think about that, but it might mean something. I do think it's interesting that she took it off and Alicent is putting it back on.
Yeah.
Even though they both clearly slept with him. Alicent a bit more, it seems. But it's nice. It's a nice detail. I didn't think about that when I saw the episode. And I will now. First council meeting, we see that Aegon is in. It seems like it's had more, obviously, but it's nice to kind of see how he is approaching this first one. And we saw him look for his son previously. And the son is here, and isn't this the most adorable child? Oh my goodness, it's so cute. The smiles that Aegon is sending to Harris.
He seems so proud. It's very cute.
And the way the child is just
getting a seat at the table.
At kind of the opposite head of the table from Aegon as well. One thing I really love about this scene is that it's showing Aegon is trying to kind of distance himself from Viserys and how Viserys did things. He is putting in his heir as soon as possible and making sure he will understand everything and learn as much as possible. And perhaps most of all, he has so much pride for him. And I think that is just so beautiful to see.
Yeah, and see how he includes his son, and even, like, I feel like this child, who's, 4 years old, is having more respect demanded for him than Rhaenyra was until she was how old? When did she even get her own chair at the table? And it's nice to see that Aegon seems to want to do it differently with his children and include them more.
I really like that he's just demanding respect for this child who's absolutely not behaving as you should in an important war council. And it's such a contrast to how when Rhaenyra was being a cupbearer and when she suggested that Viserys had dragon riders and maybe that was a way to solve some issues.
Thing to
right.
discuss.
She just tried to have some kind of input, and Viserys is just shutting her down. Like, he's kind of embarrassing her, and
everyone is looking shocked, and he's just letting her be escorted out, essentially.
and we've talked about this before, how
Yep.
that is not the way you make everyone else respect your heir. And Aegon is just
This 4-year-old has to respect.
just the contrast is very interesting, and it makes me think that Aegon maybe paid more attention to Viserys and knew Viserys better than we actually got the impression he did in season 1, because it seems throughout this he thought about how Viserys did things and he does not want to be his father. And we finally get to see that Aegon not only realizes he has children, he seems to actually care for them. He seems delighted by their presence. I have to say I'm kind of sad we didn't get to see as Aemon came back after being a moron.
Yeah, on
and
the snack run.
on the snack run. Yes, we did not get to see kind of everyone's reactions. We did not get to kind of see whether he had any guilt he tried to put away, and just kind of miffed we didn't get that.
I would have liked to see it. From the book, he's supposed to...
I think they throw a feast.
They do?
It's not exactly the most tasteful reception, I think. I think Aegon is fairly pleased and Alicent is not, but I might just be making that up in my head. I was going to say they're all past it. They're obviously not past it, but they have kind of accepted this has happened, and
I think it was a nice moment to see that Alicent lit a little candle for Lucerys. It was a sweet moment.
yeah, showing she is starting to kind of tally up all the people that are lost and
dear to her. And it's kind of nice to see that he counts as one of those.
I really think it's interesting to see all the conflicting feelings that are coming kind of into Alicent, and this council meeting as well, as Otto and obviously Aegon is ready to just end Rhaenyra as soon as he gets the chance. And Otto, everyone seems to be there that they need to die, and Alicent is just not really there. She is not, that's not her preferred course of action.
I mean, the women are showing all the restraint.
Apart from Rhaenys.
Yes. Yes.
And I'm wondering what you think about the line that Otto says the opportunity for surprise is lost. I'm wondering whether you think these people are kind of blaming Alicent for what happened because she was the one pushing to give terms to Rhaenyra instead of just, I suppose, surprising her and ending her if they thought they could do that.
It does seem to be what he means, also with how Alicent is having a chat with him a little bit later. It does seem that Otto is blaming Alicent a little bit for them losing their advantage.
And giving them time to prepare and gather strength.
Gather allies.
Lay a plan.
Yeah.
I just think it's a little bit much to put all of that blame on Alicent.
Yeah. And I like that she stands up for herself as well and says that that's not her fault later on.
Yeah. I really like as Aemon comes into the room and you can see that Aegon seems to like him a little bit more, be a little bit more of a fan of his brother than his mother and grandfather. And especially as they're talking a little bit later, by they, I mean Alicent and Otto, they're talking about how they are just waiting for Aegon to tire of this. And essentially they're going to take back control. They're just going to do as they did when Viserys was too weak to rule. I think it's very interesting. I think it's very funny. Bit presumptuous.
And it's also kind of funny to see the scene where they're in the throne room and there are the petitions. And Aegon is answering these peasants and is kind of just vibing with them. And then Otto has an issue with every single one. And I think it's so funny because they should have maybe taught Aegon some stuff.
And I think that's so interesting because their kind of secret meeting, if we can call it that, is kind of proving that they did not think this all the way through. Because they haven't really prepared him properly. And it's one thing that Viserys didn't because he never planned for this and this wasn't his will. But Alicent and Otto should have given Aegon instruction and preparation. But instead, they're just assuming he's going to be a pushover and they can just rule, and they don't even care if he's going to be a good king because they don't even see him being actually that instrumental to ruling the realm. And I think it's such an oversight. I think it's actually really funny. I mean, we'll see how things turn out, but as you're saying, when Aegon is sitting the throne and taking these petitions, he seems willing to take instruction. It doesn't seem like he's totally opposed to taking Otto's counsel, but it also seems like his main priority is to just vibe and be friends with his new besties, the small folk. It's definitely bordering on kind of comedy. It's almost a bit strange, but he really pulls it off. I think it's very funny. It seems genuine. I do quite like this scene, but I also really like the way Otto is perhaps realizing how little work they have actually put into this human now sitting with immense power. I just think it's actually quite wild how they didn't prepare. They just assumed he was going to go back to a tavern and drink, and Otto was going to sit that chair still.
Yeah, to me it seems like maybe it has to do with how Alicent was never taught to rule in any capacity before later on, as she, had been married to Viserys for a while, and eventually she ended up in the small council and stuff, but she wasn't raised to be a ruler herself. And when Otto loses his position as hand, he has to leave. And that does leave quite a few years where Alicent has no one, and she still has no experience with ruling that she can teach to Aegon as he's growing up. And by the time Otto is reinstated as hand, he is of course grown to be
A drunkard.
Yeah, so he should maybe put in more work.
But he does seem to have the spirit, the right kind of spirit. He wants to just stay friends, and when he learns that he can't necessarily always do that, it has consequences, then he is willing to just make a ruling.
Give out some free sheep.
And then take them back when that didn't work.
I hate him so much.
Same.
Can he just die already?
Honestly, he is the worst. And I wonder if he knew what Alicent was doing, because obviously as Larys is stopping Alicent in the hallway and saying that her handmaiden had said she was indisposed, he says it in such a way that I feel like he knew. And then he goes on to say that he has replaced the staff because they weren't, or he says he replaced the staff that weren't loyal, and he replaced them. So now essentially the staff is his, and if Alicent's now handmaiden is his, she wouldn't have been above telling him what she was doing, right? She wasn't exactly quiet. So I mean, I don't know. He didn't do a great job, did he? Replacing the staff with loyal people, because as we see in this episode, apparently all the loyal people are gone.
I think he forgot to replace the guards.
I think he just told everyone to get out so we can just
see a secret black amongst us.
Now I understand what he's doing, and I think in the books he's supposed to be a lot more ambiguous, whether he is kind of like green or black.
Yeah, where are his alliances?
Whereas in the show, it's been pretty clear that he is helping Alicent / also abusing her, but he's definitely been kind of on their side. But now he seems to also be playing his own side. We see that bathtub scene with Alicent, and that's obviously after she has been informed by Larys that he has replaced the servants, so she's kind of sending them away, just realizing that they're all his people, just washing her. She's scrubbing herself, I don't know, trying to scrub away her sins, her guilt, her shame, I don't know. I'm interested to see kind of the spiral she's probably about to head down. I wish better for her, but here we are. But Larys is not only talking to Alicent, he is also hooking Aegon. I kind of got the vibe that he wants to make himself hand. He's trying to manipulate Aegon into kind of... He probably knows that Aegon doesn't want to be Viserys. And he's saying, well, Otto is kind of like Viserys' hand.
Replace him.
Essentially, like, you don't want to have Viserys' hand. You don't want to be like him.
I could give you good counsel.
You want to be different, right?
I can help you there.
So it's going to be interesting to see which direction this takes.
I really hope he doesn't do that.
Same. And he is absolutely pushing on the right button for Aegon.
For sure.
That's kind of definitely one of his weaknesses. He doesn't want to be Viserys and he just wants distance from that.
He's very good at observing people, as he points out himself.
Once more.
And then uses it against them.
And then we head to the Black Camp, where Mysaria is captured on a ship trying to flee King's Landing. I have no idea where she was headed, but she decided to take a pit stop into Daemon's cell.
I don't know, I didn't quite like what they did with Mysaria in this episode.
It seems a bit off that she seems to be she's such an unwilling participant in trading information when that's all she's been doing.
Yeah, and like I can understand her wanting to get away and not being part of the war at all, but when she is caught, I feel like it would maybe have made more sense for her to try to get out of the situation by using what she's really good at, which is information, rather than just deciding to, she wants to be a prisoner.
Yeah, she kind of just gives up.
She just wants to be a traitor to the realm prisoner who likely will be fed to dragons eventually.
Probably. But thankfully, it's interrupted by Rhaenyra's arrival. Rhaenyra has now seen the truth that Luke is gone. I don't feel like she's as angry as she was at the end of the last episode, but she does have anger, and she says her only line this episode: I want Aemon Targaryen. It's not what she gets, is it?
No.
No.
But it's a reasonable request.
I mean, it is. It just is. And it would have been fair.
The son for a son would make more sense.
And technically is a son. All men are.
Yeah, but that sort of dilutes the saying, doesn't it?
Yes. I mean, she's entering and they seem to have a kind of council meeting-ish. But both Daemon and Rhaenys are there. And at the beginning of the episode, they obviously had that conversation where Daemon wanted to go and take on Vhagar, but he wanted help because Vhagar is a little big. So
really, Mr. I need nothing.
Apparently he needs a little bit of help, but Rhaenys doesn't want to go because Rhaenyra hasn't said okay. But I mean, at this kind of council meeting, whatever kind of meeting,
Yeah.
she is saying go for it. She
says what she wants.
Mm-hmm. So I'm a bit surprised that's not what they're doing, because now
They kind of got the green light for that plan.
Yeah.
And Meleys has probably gotten time to gorge and rest.
So, I mean, are they cowards? Why are they not going?
Craven?
It's a bit odd, and it launches into what happens next, doesn't it? And what happens next is another meeting with Mysaria.
You want your freedom, don't you?
Right.
Like, she wouldn't have thought to give him some information for her freedom before.
And then the next scene is has much more of a payoff. It's a very emotional scene with Rhaenyra and her eldest son Jace as they are together mourning Luke. Very sad. And Jace is trying to be strong.
Trying to do his duty. And Rhaenyra having, I think this is the first time someone actually gives her proper comfort.
That's really sad.
Yeah.
It's very emotional, I think, also in part because it's one of the few relations that is not marked by being first and foremost a political alliance or having any of these kind of power imbalances kind of coloring the relationship. This just seems very pure and it's still just really, really sad, obviously.
Yeah, for all the people that they kill off in this series, there's very little actual unity in the grief that is shown.
A lot of the characters are very alone a lot of the time. It's not great. We do have the funeral scene, which is also very emotional. And then we're launching straight into amateur hour. So finally, after a couple of years of waiting, everyone knows what blood and cheese is after all the talk.
It's a highly anticipated event. Do we call it that?
I think that's the way to describe it, even though it feels wrong.
Like, this is kind of where that endeavor officially starts in the episode. I feel like the preparation for it has already been kind of muddy with Mysaria, because he is, from the books at least, supposed to be quite instrumental, and also here she's providing information and contacts for Daemon as he's about to meet. And I felt maybe a little confusing.
I know, and I'm really wondering if that is because we have read the book and we know what's supposed to happen. I don't know, but I have to agree, it was a bit jarring. There's something about sitting here and kind of trying to brace yourself because you know what's going to happen, but also you're a bit confused, which is kind of strange. I wonder what people who have not read the books think, so if that is you, I'd love to hear. Obviously, we know something is going to happen, and Rhaenyra has asked for Aemon Targaryen, so we are kind of assuming there's going to be a fight maybe between them, and obviously Daemon has his murder hood on. So we know something is going to happen. He's got 2 looks, and that's it. It's been made kind of quite a big deal about before that the Gold Cloaks are still quite loyal to Daemon, and it seems like he is chatting up a Gold Cloak here, making sure they're not allied or loyal to the Aegon faction of the Targaryens. I just think it's weird. I just think it's weird because at the beginning of the episode, he made it kind of clear he didn't want to take on Aemon alone. But maybe he's just trying to take on Aemon without Vhagar. But now instead he is just finding a random gold cloak and some dude with a gambling addiction, and they're gonna take on Aemon. Craven. I do think it's really strange.
I mean, it does seem like they're trying to sort of give the vibe that, oh, they weren't trying to kill Jaehaerys.
Oh, you mean a child?
Yeah.
A toddler?
No, they would never. And it was totally just a misunderstanding. They were definitely just trying to get revenge on Aemon because, you know, he's the one who killed Lucerys via Vhagar. We do get the line where the rat catcher, which I believe she is asking what if they can't find Aemon, and then we just get a look from Daemon.
And no explanation. And I do kind of understand why they don't want to give an explanation, because it would give everything away. The surprise would obviously be lost. We don't even truly know what the plan is. It's quite confusing. But he does say he has blonde hair and one eye, which the one eye thing should be a very...
It kind of sounds like Aemon.
It's just such a strange thing, because are they trying to give Daemon a little bit of a break that he's not so evil as to kill a child, or are they trying to keep it kind of like a surprise?
I just think it's quite interesting that they choose to have Cheese ask what they're gonna do if they can't find Aemon, and then very specifically not show us what Daemon says, when they could have easily instead had that be a conversation between Blood and Cheese inside the castle. Like, what are we going to do if we can't get this person who's going to be our ticket to get that gold, you know?
That's true. That would have absolved Daemon a little bit more, I think, because he clearly says that they're going to kill a son. And I'm assuming it's not just going to be a random staff son.
No, because old men are sons, right?
Right.
I'm thinking that he must have said something more than just, oh, then just leave, guys.
But also, like, how much faith you should have, like, feel your faith in an assassin kind of dwindle a little bit as they say, what if we don't find him? I mean, you should find him, no? I mean, you should, that is the goal, is it not? You're not duck hunting. It's not like you just take someone else. Like, it's so strange to me. It's just weird. I don't get it, as if it's like, whatever, as long as you bring me a head. It's a bit weird. I have to say, I think it's a bit weird.
Very messy to me.
And I also just can't imagine Daemon, who is an experienced killer and a fighter and really brave. He's going to look at these 2 weird-ass people and think, they're going to kill Aemon Targaryen. That's going to be fine. That's not going to be a problem. I'm just going to tell them he's a bit of a fighter. It's going to solve everything. They'll be prepared. They look like they have lots of weapons. Is he expecting Aemon to die from this? Because I wouldn't.
He's already in King's Landing, so he's made the trip. He's right outside the gates. He could have gone in and done it himself.
Especially with the lack of guards.
This is a person who attacked the entire army down in the stepstones.
It's so weird because these two are the kind of people that would definitely be able to kill a toddler because you really don't need much other than being a vile human to do that. Because it's not a fight, is it?
And you already got the go-ahead to take your dragon and Rhaenys and her dragon.
Right?
Were they frightened Sunfire was going to join?
Because they probably know he's there.
Yeah, and Dreamfire.
I just think it's honestly a bit unbelievable.
It tiptoes a little bit close to Daemon's going to do a big bad, but we don't want to say it.
It definitely feels like they're trying to absolve him of doing something that evil. Whoopsie, it was an accident. And let's talk about that, huh? Let's talk about how they walk into a castle and they have no idea where they're even going. It's so unprepared. It's so unprofessional. Can't believe I'm saying that about child murder. You never want that to be professional, but it's just...
And there's something weird about the dialogue as well, when one of them says, I know the way there, but I don't know the way around.
Wasn't that the whole point of Miss Arya? She knew her way around there. And also, just the first room they happen upon is Helena's. It's not like they tried to find Aemon very hard. They gave up very quickly.
I also feel like they went quite quickly from when Cheese has Helaena and Blood comes in. It goes quite swiftly from that's not a son. Whereas Aemon is obviously not a child anymore, but they're not referencing, oh, that's a woman, we're looking for a man. It's specifically, that's not the son.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the one we're looking for. And I think that's a bit peculiar because it kind of implies a younger target, perhaps.
Yeah.
In my mind. That's like, it doesn't sound like, oh, but that one has 2 eyes. We were looking for the one with 1.
They are very, very quick to accept that there's a child in the room, we can take that one, instead of, where's Aemon? They could have kind of tortured that out of her instead of killing the children. They could have threatened to kill her children and said, where is he? And she probably would have given up her brother over her child. I mean, let's just be honest. But that's not what they're doing. They're just itching to get that head, I suppose. It also was difficult to watch, so it's kind of a difficult scene to talk about, even though they thankfully show nothing graphic. It is quite graphic. Well, it's kind of graphic when they have a knife to her throat, obviously, but they don't show any of the actual killing, obviously, thankfully, but it's still just awful. The sound is horrible, and as she's running, just hearing her child be killed is just horrible. So awful. So it's kind of difficult to talk about, but I do still think that the whole event was a bit lacking in believability, perhaps most of all. And honestly, as she's running out, where are all of the guards?
She doesn't see anyone until she reaches Alicent.
Rhaenyra has guards stationed outside her room, always, especially at night. That just seems to be the custom. They're nowhere. She's running and running and running, and there is nobody else in the castle. It's too unbelievable, I think. I would feel so much better if it was something that was planned and they knew the way, so they knew which room and they could go in and pose as rat catchers, both of them obviously, under that guise and get to the right room. But instead they're just roaming around, and it's just kind of, they accidentally happen upon the room they kind of were supposed to be in. It's
something in the conversation about, oh, but I'm not supposed to go upstairs. And
then what were you planning on doing?
It feels a little bit like this was not a story that they wanted to tell.
I think you nailed it. I think so. They're a little bit too afraid to show that certain characters are awful instead of just doing it. But I just don't think it looks that great on Daemon either, because there is still like a little bit of logical fallacy in the actions he's having. He was so keen on going with his dragon and taking on Aemon, and when he gets the go-ahead, he is just a craven instead.
Goes with a completely different plan, suddenly.
And I mean, I get that these assassins are not exactly supposed to be the cream of the crop, humanity-wise, but is it truly that easy to just decide that instead of trying to take on a trained killer, you're just gonna slaughter a child in its bed instead. They get to that point incredibly quickly. That is like, there is no moral quandary there. And again, did even they think they could take on Aemond?
I'm very, very curious what they're gonna do in the next episode. How is Daemon's reaction gonna be if we get to see it? Do they get paid the full amount for this?
Asking the important questions.
I don't know how much they want to absolve him, because it would shock me if they show us a scene where he pays them and it's like, yes, this head will do. I mean, he wanted the head to make sure it was the right person. That's generally why you bring a head.
The one with one eye.
Yes.
This one has two. And also, it's a toddler.
Because even if they took Helaena, that would have made more sense to me. Because at least she has a huge dragon. And it would take out, what shall we say, a large portion of their dragon total. And also the queen. And she's Daemon's sister. So
what we can kind of see from this episode is that Aegon seems to be more invested in his children than his forced marriage wife. So I am thinking they went for Jaehaerys because they want to anger the opponent, the one who, in their eyes, stole Rhaenyra's throne.
But if their quarrel is with Aemond...
But it's not, is it?
Well, it's probably both.
I think for Rhaenyra, it is.
Yes.
I think for Daemon, I think his main goal is to win this war. And I think you want to kind of break Aegon as much as you can. It's not about fair or justice, because in that case you would make sure it was Aemond, and that's not what he's doing.
It would have been very easy to add a line from Daemon that just was like, it's Aemond or no one. But
Right.
they didn't.
No. The actual scene itself, I felt, was a little bit, maybe a bit lacking as well. Again, truly horrifying, and I think if you don't know what's coming, as you're realizing that they're going to go for the children, it's probably very, very rough. I'm kind of happy I knew what was going to happen, just because it's easier to kind of, you don't have to have that shock.
Extremely dark.
It's very awful. Helaena seems to be in absolute shock, as she can't even say my child, my boy. She can't even say his name. She's just saying they killed a boy.
A part of me is a little sad that they didn't show more fight from Helaena, because I'm worried that people are going to look at her and feel like she's being passive in that situation, when people do respond very differently to trauma, and I think there's value in showing that. Then
I just really, really hate the shot with the finger. I feel like that's not even the same show. What are you even doing? It's a bit weird, if I can be
This
quite
scene is,
critical.
of course, very different from the one in the book. And if you
True.
haven't read the book, then that scene is
Worse.
horrible.
Yes.
It's already horrible, but it is
Worse.
worse. I think one big difference is that the children are awake in the book. And I'm intrigued to see the difference in how their trauma is going to develop as a response to that. And I think Alicent was also supposed to be present.
I think she was. To me, it feels like it's cheapening the event a little bit. Two things are particularly doing this. But the fact that they're ending, Helaena is traumatized and running in on Alicent, enjoying Kristen in a different way than we already saw this episode, I feel is a bit taking away from the event a little bit.
Like nobody cares about that.
If they want to show that Alicent is doing this while this awful thing is going on, I feel like it's a bit unnecessary. But if they do, show it before what is happening and not after, because I feel like after should be all about Helaena and the trauma and the child and all of this that's happening, not the shock of... Don't try to soften the shock of child murder with inappropriate sex. I think that's cheap. I really do. And there is a different way to tell the exact same story. So I don't like that. They do have that kind of comedic relief of Aegon with his buddies kind of before everything happens. And while I do quite enjoy that scene,
I think that's the only thing I like in the last part of this episode.
I have to agree. Him just sitting that chair like it's the most comfy chair he's ever sat is quite funny, and everything he's saying, and he's talking with his mates, and I do enjoy that. It's light and it's kind of funny. It's also obviously showing that he's not present to kind of protect the children. Only Helaena is there with the children. So I feel like that's fine. It's also happening before the event, so you know that something is going to happen, obviously, and Aegon is there drinking, slurring his words. But the whole Alicent and Kristen thing at the end, strongly dislike.
It is a shame, because it's a really big event that I unfortunately was maybe not very satisfied by how they went about it.
I have to agree. It's too unbelievable that you can be that unprepared and that unprofessional and still end up actually killing the heir. No guards stop you. Nothing. You're a dum-dum and you still manage to succeed.
I mean, the accident is accidenting too hard, too close to the sun to be believable. And
Truly.
It's jarring and makes it, unfortunately, not enjoyable on any level. You know, not that child murder is enjoyable at any level.
Never.
Regardless, but this could have been a very powerful moment. More of a powerful moment. Also, where is Dreamfire?
I know. We've never seen her with Helaena.
Never. She hasn't gotten a single scene.
Maybe in that Driftmark episode in season 1 where they are flying next to the boat. We see a shadow. She looks like a bird.
Oh, wow.
I think that's her.
You're right, yeah.
Possibly, maybe.
Magical scene.
Yes. So, you know.
It kind of bothers me. We do see Rhaenyra and Syrax a lot. And also, we often get clips of Syrax sort of displaying the similar emotion. And I feel like this would have been a prime moment for us to see a Dreamfire moment as Helaena is going through this immense trauma.
We actually even see that with Daemon and Caraxes, as Daemon is taking an arrow to his shoulder.
Yeah.
Caraxes is reacting as maybe he is hit as well. So I have to agree. I think one thing they would have to do to make that work with Helaena and Dreamfire is we need to see them. This can't be the first time we see some random dragon. So they should have had like a scene. I am missing some scenes with them.
Yeah. I was really hoping for some Dreamfire Helaena bonding screen time for this episode, and I feel like there was a lot happening this episode.
A lot, yes.
But not that. And I feel like that should have been a priority, given this being the most intense moment of Helena's arc.
Yeah. So, it's going to be difficult to wrap this up in a pretty little bow because it's such a heavy,
depressing
episode to kind of a way to end an episode, but the whole episode is really heavy. The only light moments, ironically, are Aegon's, which is kind of wild. Who would have thought that from
kind of an Uno reverse from
the
last?
Yes, a little bit. What did you like the least about this episode?
No Dreamfire.
No Dreamfire. I'm gonna have to say the Blood and Cheese event, how it was done, which is probably not a surprise from everything we have talked about. But can I point out one thing? How on earth did that person know that Helaena was telling the truth? How did Cheese just say she's telling the truth? It's so weird. It read as completely insane to me.
But that's really weird because he's like looking at her and it's...
Is he psychic?
Are we supposed to understand something? And like
I
how
know.
he could reveal
I'm
that?
so confused. Does he know her really well, so he just knows when she's telling the... It's so weird.
Is that a thing, that if you can sniff out rats, you can sniff out truth?
Maybe. I thought it was super weird, a bit cringe. I don't know. And to me, it almost felt like just a way to get that scene to move along quicker.
Yeah.
Like, we don't want to spend more time on this. So he's just going to say she's telling the truth, and then they're just going to go with that and cut the head off.
Yeah.
Really, yeah. Didn't like that.
I didn't like the dog kicking for obvious reasons, but also I just feel like it's such a cheap way to make you think someone is a bad guy that it irks me the wrong way, that it's like just another nail in that, oh, this person is bad, evil bad. This person is about to cut off the head of a child.
Yeah.
We don't need to see you kick a dog to believe he's bad.
Let's talk about what we did like about this episode. I can say I really enjoyed seeing Aegon having a lot of fun with his new position, and sadly, which is now kind of awful to think about, but how much he seemed to care for his son.
Yeah.
His child.
Aegon fatherhood. Mm-hmm. That was not on my bingo card for what was going to be wholesome about this season.
Do you have a rating for this episode?
Miffed.
Miffed. I was thinking a number, but miffed works.
Miffed out of 10?
I will say I was miffed out of 10, yeah. I was miffed-ish out of 10, because I did enjoy, especially the first half of the episode.
Yeah.
I quite enjoyed.
It's true. We would, of course, love to hear your opinions about the episodes, what you liked and didn't like.
Join us next week for more thoughts on repressed people having shameful sex.